Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Digital Diaries. So let's start the part 3 of our AZ-400 Azure DevOps Expert exam. So let's dive into it. So the very first question is you have an Azure web app named Web App 1. You need to use an Azure Monitor query to create a report that details the top 10 pages of Web App 1 that failed. How should you complete the query? So we have given a query. So these are the request tables from where we have to select the appropriate condition and it will display the top 10 pages of Web App 1 that failed. Okay, so these are the respective options. So let's go to the answer. So the answer is request and the condition will be success equal to false. So from the tables, exception, page views, requests, and traces. So we are going to look into the request table and there we will have a condition success equal to false and the rest will follow. Okay, so this is an explanation of the same that this table contains data for all HTTP requests made to our app service, web app 1, and each row includes information like the request URL, response code, success failure status, duration, etc. And this is the explanation of the condition that it filters only failed HTTP request. So a request that is marked as success equal to false when it returns a status code greater than equal to 400 covering both client and server side errors. So it will show the respective details. So, second question, your company uses ServiceNow for incident management. You developed an application that runs on Azure. The company needs to generate a ticket in ServiceNow when the application fails to authenticate. Which Azure log analytics solution would you use? So, the use case is that we have to log a ticket in ServiceNow when the application fails to authenticate. So, the answer, respected, you can say answer is IT Service Management Connector. Okay, so let's see the details. So the explanation for the following is the IT Service Management Connector is an Azure solution that allows you to automatically create work items, incident alerts, etc. So it can be used with to create tickets in ServiceNow, System Center Service Manager, Sharewell, and Provence. Okay. So the third question is you are creating a build pipeline in Azure Pipelines and you define several tests that might fail due to third-party applications. You need to ensure that the build pipeline completes successfully. If the third-party applications are unavailable, what should you do? So in this case, you see that there's a dependence on third party and there are certain test cases related to third party and we still want our build pipeline to pass even if the third party applications are not available. So the options given here are the configure the build pipeline to use parallel jobs. So parallel jobs don't have any use case here. Okay, configure flaky test. Okay, we will come to it. This is the answer actually. Third parties increase the test pass percentage. So obviously this is not going to be an answer because increasing the test pass percentage will increase the failure of our build pipelines, right? And the last one is add the requirements quality widget to your dashboard. So this is not something that we are going to do. So let's come to the answer, configure flaky tests. So what are flaky tests? Flaky tests are tests that sometimes pass, sometimes fails. The reason for their success or failure are like timing issues, external dependencies, like in our question it is asked that if third party apps are not available or libraries are not available, so the build pipeline must not fail. Okay, so race condition, resource availability. So these are some of the conditions. So in Azure pipelines, what we do, we mark some test as flaky. So if flaky test fails, it does not cause the build to fail. Okay. So the next question is fourth question. You have an Azure DevOps project that contains a build pipeline. The build pipeline uses approximately 50 open source libraries and you need to ensure that all the open source libraries comply with your company's licensing standards. Which service should you use? So the options given are NuGet, Maven, Black Duck, Helm. So we have to do the compliance here. Okay. So let's check the answer. Black Duck. Okay, so for rest of the option we know that .NET, so it's oh sorry, so it's NuGet. So NuGet is a package manager for .NET. Maven is also a dependency management tool for Java. And Black Duck, so it scans our code base and dependencies for open source components and detect license violations and find security vulnerabilities. So Black Duck has a detect tool that do all of this for us. And the last option is Helm. So it is a manager for Kubernetes. Okay. So question fifth, you configure Azure Application Insights in the shared service plan tier for a web app. You enable smart detection. You confirm that standard metrics are visible in the logs, but when you test a failure, you do not receive a smart detection notification. What prevents the smart detection notification from being sent? So we have configured our smart detection. Okay, so let's see what are the options. You must enable the snapshot debugger for the web app. Okay. Smart detection uses the first 24 hours to establish the normal behavior of the web app. The web app is configured to use the shared service plan tier. You must restart the web app before smart detection is enabled. So let's check the answer. The answer is smart detection uses the first 24 to establish the normal behavior of the web app. Actually, it tracks the user behavior or the behavior of our app. So it takes some time to gather those telemetry and then it starts detecting the failures, etc. So for other options, like you must enable the snapshot debugger. So snapshot debugger helps with debugging exceptions, but it is not required for smart detection to work. Okay, web app is configured to use a shared service plan tier, so it is regardless of the pricing tier. Smart detection works regardless of the pricing tier. You must restart the web app before smart detection is enabled. Okay, so restarting the web app has no impact on smart detection configuration. Let's move to the sixth question. So you have an Azure subscription that contains the resources shown in the following table. You plan to create a link service in TF1. The link services will start to connect to SQL1 by using Microsoft SQL Server authentication, and the password for the SQL Server login will be stored in KV1, and you need to configure TF1 to retrieve the password when the data factory connects to SQL1. A solution must use the principle of least privilege, and how should you configure df1? So in this question it is asked that the data factory must go to the key vault. Okay, retrieve the password and then connect to the SQL. So we need to tell the permission type and access method in this. So let's check the answer. So answer will be the permission type will be secret and the access method will be access policies. So the explanation is to access key vault secrets via Azure Data Factory. You typically configure an access policy in key vault that grants the df1 manage identity the permission to get secret. Next question, you are creating a YAML-based Azure pipeline to deploy an Azure Data Factory instance that has the following requirements. If a Data Factory instance exists already, the instance must be overridden. No other resource in a resource group named Fabricam must be affected. How should you complete the code? So the good thing is in this question, if you want to answer is you must know about the deployment modes. Okay. So in this, they have said that if a data factory instance already exists, so if some instance or some resource already exists, it must be overwritten. Okay. And no other resources in a resource group must be affected. Okay. So let's check the answer. So they want to know the action and the deployment method. So in action, they have given us create or update a resource group, select resource group, start. And in deployment mode, they have given us complete, incremental, and validation only. So let's see the answer. So the action will be create or update a resource group because they told us to override or create a new resource if it does not exist. Okay. And the method will be incremental. Why? Let's check. So in explanation, incremental deployment method is Azure adds new resources and updates existing ones defined in our template. So it fulfills the question condition that it will update or override the data factory instance if it already exists, but it must not affect the other resources. So the complete deployment mode is it removes all existing Azure resources that are not defined in the template. Okay, so but we don't want to affect the other resources, so this is not the answer. And for validation only is just like it do the validation part but does not deploy anything. So next question is, your company uses Azure DevOps for the build pipelines and deployment pipelines of Java-based projects. You need to recommend a strategy for managing technical debt. Which two actions should you include in the recommendation? So we have to select two options from these four options, and we have to manage technical debt. Okay. So the first of all, see the options. Configure post-deployment approval in the deployment pipeline. Configure pre-deployment approval in the deployment pipeline. Integrate Azure DevOps and SonarQube. Integrate Azure DevOps and Azure Test Labs. So technical debt happens when we are developing the code. Okay. It does not happen during deployment. So we are for sure that we have to do something before deployment. So let's check the answer. So the answer is configure pre-deployment approvals in the deployment pipeline. So this is one of the answers. And integrate Azure DevOps and SonarQube. So integrate Azure DevOps and SonarQube. Why we are integrating Azure DevOps with SonarQube? Because it will do the static code analysis and it will know all the static code related things or the rules that we are not following, and it will help us to reduce the technical debt. The other two options are that are not the answer. The explanation for them is configure post-deployment approvals in the deployment pipeline. So post-deployment approvals are for validation after deployment, and they are not useful in managing technical debt because it is handled before deployment, right? Integrate Azure DevOps and Azure Dev Test Labs. So it Dev Test Labs is for provisioning test environments, and it does not help directly help with technical debt management. Okay, so the next question is, you are implementing a Azure package management solution for a Node.js application by using Azure artifacts. You need to configure the development environment to connect to the package repo. The solution must minimize the likelihood that credentials will be leaked. Which file should you use to configure each connection? So we have a Node.js application and we are doing package management using Azure artifacts. And now what we have to do, we configure the development environment through package repos, and we don't want the credentials to be leaked. So they want to know where we will store the feed registry information and where we will store the credentials. So they have given the files, the np mrc file in the project, the .npmrc file in the user's home folder, the package.json file, the package in the project, and the package.json file. Okay, both they have given. Okay, the project.json file in the project. Okay, okay. So let's check the answer. So for feed registry information, feed registry is from where we will fetch our packages. So the .npmrc file in the project will be used. Okay, for credentials, right? For authentication, the .npmrc file in the user's home folder will be used. Why? The project.npm-rc for registry info only. This file is checked into source control, so avoid putting credentials here. Okay, the npm-rc file that will be a part of project will be committed to the git, okay, or your version control system. So we are not going to put credentials there, right? But it has the registry URL for the feed from which we will fetch our packages. Now the other option is use the user's home.npm-rc for credentials. So this file is stored at locations in Linux and Windows. These are the locations, right? And it is not shared or committed, making it safe for credentials, and it contains the authentication token. So that's why it will stay on the user's machine and it will not be committed to the repo. Hence, the token will not be public. So this is the answer. Now, next question, you need to recommend a Docker container build strategy that meets the following requirement: minimizes image sizes, minimizes the security surface area of the final image. What should you include in the recommendation? So whenever we have to reduce the size of the Docker container, we are going to use multi-stage builds. So that is the answer. Okay, so in A is the answer. So let's check for other options as well. So the answer is multi-stage builds. The why other so explanation for other option is single stage builds includes all build tools dependencies in final image larger and less secure. So in one image we are going to push each and everything, so that's why this is a larger and less secure image. PowerShell DSC, desired state configuration, so it's a configuration management, not a Docker build part. Docker Swarm, so it is for orchestration and scaling but not for image building. So thank you everyone for watching this video and stay tuned for the next video. Thank you.